If you like track and field and just really want to see the best athletes in the world go at it, then you can do that at the NCAA level. I showed up this year to the NCAA's East Region First Round meet for Division I, and when I got there, I got to watch Abdul Rashid Saminu of South Florida go out there and run a new world leading time of 9.86 seconds, at least at the time when he pulled it off. However, just a few moments later, I got a text message about the West Regional meet, where Jordan Anthony went out there and ran 9.75 seconds, which is the fastest time in the world under all conditions, because his was slightly wind assisted at 2.1 meters per second. Once again, I'm just talking about the 100 meter dash. But Jordan Anthony specifically is also a football player, which is ironic, because during the week between his West Regional race, which sent shockwaves around the world and people even thought he might have a shot to win the world in the 100, like if he actually pulled up to do it. In that time period, the NCAA dropped the bomb. I mean, one that we should have seen coming for a while now, that college athletes are officially going to be allowed to be paid by their institutions. They're calling it revenue share, and by now you probably should have heard about it. When you see the story in the media, you're likely going to hear a lot about how amateurism is dead, that this is a great day for college sports, that the athletes deserve to get paid, and that now they're going to finally get a chance to do it. That the NCAA is, giving the kids what they deserve, and that people are going to make generational wealth. All of these things might be true, sorta kinda, but they're really not telling you the whole story. And I have gone on record to say, from the moment that we knew that revenue share was going to be a thing, I'm talking almost about a year ago, and I've got the receipts to prove it, I have been tracking this story for a while, and I've always said from the beginning that this is not going to go well for the track and field teams in Division I, and they're the reason. Because when these rules are changing, and we now talk about paying revenue to college athletes, they never had any intentions on actually paying all the athletes, which is a big problem. Because if you're not in that group, then what's actually going to happen to you? And you're not going to hear much about it from the rest of the media, because ESPN and all their friends can't even be bothered to mention track and field by name. They just lump it in with all the non-revenue generating sports, or for that matter, they'll even call it just the Olympic sports, just slapped all of those together. And then when it comes to track and field itself, the CEO of the sports governing body at the college level, Sam Seams, said himself, this is before the settlement came down, but we knew it was coming, that college track and field is under siege, and that the threats are very real and very immediate, and that if we don't act fast as a sport, it's going to fade away into obscurity. Once again, that basically means programs are going to get shut down, athletes are going to lose opportunities on rosters to compete, and well, I guess coaches are going to lose their jobs, because if there's no team, you don't really need a coach anymore. So as far as this court case is concerned, now that things are settled, sorta kinda, and I'll get to that part in a moment, I figured that you deserve to know the truth about what is about to happen. Granted, nobody knows all of what's going to happen, but considering I've seen this freight train coming for a while now, and a lot of the stuff that's actually happened is what I predicted would happen. Once again, I've got the receipts to prove it. I care about you enough, and I care about the sport, that I want you to have all of the facts if college track and field is your sport of choice, and you hope to be able to do it in the future, even if you're on a team at this present moment. For that reason, I am aware that some things I'm about to say are likely going to upset some people, and yes, this is a video where I'm willing to accept the consequences, because like I just said, you deserve to know the truth, no matter how ugly it might actually get. So let's have a very real conversation about college track and field and how revenue sharing in the power conferences and beyond is actually going to affect us. Because guess what? That world is one we're about to live in. Like, as of right now. It's coming. And if you think I'm just sensationalizing this and playing it all up for some sort of, rage baiting or, creating a frenzy, I wish that you were right. I just don't believe that's actually what's happening. Metaphorically speaking, the sky is actually falling, and it's going to hit most of the track and field teams in the head. So all I can really tell you as advice before I'll go any further is you had better get yourself an umbrella, a really good one. And hopefully, it's reinforced really strongly. And this is why. Before I go any further, I'm going to lay out the details about who is going to get paid in this new model and exactly how it's going to happen. I'm not going to go over things that I've covered in other videos. I'm just going to link a playlist with all that information on it at the end of this one. And I'm also going to put some articles and links to other videos so you can fact check me on this, because I'm not trying to make anything at all up. I'm even going to put a link to my full feature-length article that is going to break down everything in this video and beyond, because I can't go through everything verbally. All that being said, let's get to who actually gets the money. The NCAA had a settlement, specifically with the power conferences. There's only 4 of them now because the Pac-12 is dead/rebooted or whatever we want to call it, but they ain't power anymore, whatever they're actually doing. The 4 conferences, you already know who they are. The SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this part out loud. It's really the SEC and the Big Ten at the top of this, and then the Big 12, and then the ACC. There is an actual pecking order even within the power conferences. That's going to affect a lot of what I'm going to say in the video going forward, because the money and who gets it isn't all going to be equal. Those conferences were settling $2.8 billion in back pay to athletes from 2016 up until now who feel that the NCAA was, keeping them from making fair market value because of amateurism. Again, the whole structure where NIL wasn't a thing. And then you have to remember that NIL, like the ability to get paid and make money, name, image, and likeness, that has been a thing now for the last 4 or 5 years, at least in some form. So as we consider that to where we are now, the big shift is that college programs will be able to directly pay athletes. They don't have to use the term NIL anymore if they don't want to. And those direct payments can go to a salary cap of $20.3 million in the 2025-2026 season. After that, that money's going to continue to go up. That means they're saying you can pay about $20 million to the entire athletic department, not just one sport. But we all know that the majority of this money is supposed to go to college football. So much so that Josh Pate said a while ago on his channel, because he focuses on college football exclusively, that when he looked at that $20 million budget, he assumed, he didn't even question it, that almost all of that money was going to football. He didn't even bring up basketball when he did it. Keep that in mind, because that means the money, the $20 million we're discussing, is really all about football and nobody else. Basketball to a significantly lesser degree. With that in mind, that money doesn't mean that NIL is still not going to be a thing beyond it. There's going to be a new clearinghouse to help vet deals, because kids have been getting money essentially unregulated up until now. The moment NIL went into effect, the boosters, the collectives, and money just started showing up. People don't even know who gets what and how or why. That was the real issue. So they want to start putting stuff on a ledger. We want to be able to know who gets money, how much are they getting, what is it for? And again, as it goes on the boards, the schools are going to be expected to pay out the athletes. Everything I just said is really about the power conferences. They're the only ones who have to do what I just said. But $20.3 million is a salary cap. They're not mandating you spend $20 million. They're just saying you can spend up to $20 million. See where I'm going with this? So the programs that have the money, again, the ones you know who they are, the big name schools that you see on television on a regular basis, those schools are likely going to hit the $20 million barrier and try to find additional money in NIL to keep on paying athletes. So it's a fake salary cap, to be honest, because you can just keep finding money from a bunch of other sources and try to keep clearing it with this new clearinghouse, however that's going to work. I mean, we'll see how that goes in terms of the regulation of it. But all of the things I'm saying really don't relate to track and field at all. So let's get to how this thing is going to affect the track teams specifically. If you are in a power conference and you are a track and field team, forget about everything else. Just realize that your track and field team right now in the sports present structure now just represents an incredibly fat bill for the athletic department. Because up until now, you were a student athlete. And that meant you got what you got because you were a student athlete. Allow me to explain. Hey, why are we flying the track team to California from New Jersey, Iowa, or wherever else? The answer was they're student athletes. We are in the Big Ten. We are in the SEC. And we got to give them a good experience. That was the old answer. But the new answer is since y'all all want to get paid now, like the athletes want to get paid, we give you what you're worth. So when they say, why are we flying the track team to California? They're like, that's a good question. They don't generate any revenue. Why are we doing it? You see where I'm going with this now? I'm just talking about the power conferences. If you run track and field or compete on a track and field team in a power conference, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, those programs are now going to be scrutinized even more heavily. Because if your team is not winning in the conference and at the national level, again, you're just a fat bill. Because we're flying you around. Remember, these conferences stretch across the entire country now. You've got Boston College and Stanford in the same conference. But if you're new here, I want to say thank you for even making it this far into the video. And I'm Coach Rob, the founder of SCARecruiting.com, where I rank the best track and field recruits across the entire nation. And if anything that I say actually connects with you, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe. But if I don't, just let me know in the comment section because I try to read them all. This past year, 2025, Rutgers really did a conference meet in Oregon. I'm not making this up. New Jersey went to Oregon for a track and field conference meet. These are the same teams that track and field teams, normally you have to travel with poles for pole vault, javelins, all of that, implements. This is normally what you travel with in a bus trip. So when you got to fly and fly a whole team, men and women, this is incredibly costly considering no revenues coming back. I attended the East Regional meet. There were no fans at the meet, as far as I could tell. I saw parents, I saw coaches, I saw athletes, and maybe, when I say maybe, I mean there's no real guarantee about it, might have been a cousin, like some other distant family member who really loved the athlete that badly. Those are the only people there. There were no like spectators to watch these super high level performances produced by these track athletes. I've already shared my thoughts on the college track system, how to help fix it, how to make it more entertaining, perhaps draw in more revenue. No need to go back on that now and share my thoughts on it. Remember, it's all going to be in the playlist I'm going to share with you. But I'm saying power conference programs that are not winning, those are the ones that are most likely to see not just reductions, but likely to get cut. Because the whole roster limit thing, which you probably should have heard by now, that is still going to go into effect. Schools will now have the option, and it's on the option, to grandfather in the athletes who are already on their team. Some schools already started sending people into the portal and telling them, hey, we're not going to have a spot for you. And the fact of the matter is it all comes down to money. If we're trying to pay football more money, I mean, I'm not going to give a whole bunch of school names, but you kind of know who I'm talking about. The schools that don't win much in the ACC, but play football, can't compete now if they don't find as much revenue share dollars as possible to give to those athletes, NIL deals, and everything else. Track and field is not a concern at all for those schools. Remember, the track team is just a fat bill. That's all they are. And that bill, you want to get it down as low as possible. And the lowest you can get it is get rid of it. Get rid of the team. And if you can justify that, trust me, somebody's going to do it. We know teams can get cut because Minnesota tried to cut their men's track team. I believe they did cut indoor track. I believe that actually happened. They cut a lot of funding over at Maryland. We know that Clemson tried to cut their team. Like, this happens. This is all over the last decade or so, COVID specifically. Track teams can get cut, especially on the men's side. But in the power conferences, even where the big money is flying, you are not safe. That is important. And even with the roster caps of 45 and 35 for the SEC men and all of that going forward, schools are not mandated to spend all of that scholarship money. And many of them have no plans to do it. I could have told you that when those limits came out. Whatever Congress said and whatever settlement deals they put together, that had nothing to do with track and field. They just put numbers that looked good because they're trying to make rules for everybody, but those rules are really for football. Like, they're making football rules and trying to figure out how to, roll it down to other sports, even if it doesn't really work that well. Simply put, there will be fewer opportunities to compete in track and field in the power conferences. That's just what's going to happen going forward. Some more athletes, it's possible that a higher percentage of athletes might get scholarships of the ones who actually are there. That is possible, especially on the women's side. But when it comes to the total number of athletes who get to compete at that level in the years going forward, that is going to drop. And some programs, I can't tell you exactly which ones at the moment, but I'm pretty sure somebody's program is about to get cut. And it's going to happen sooner than you think. When you leave the power conferences, this is where things get a whole lot more interesting. Because if you play FBS football and you're not in the power conferences, you are at risk. Because those schools don't have the money to share revenue. They really don't. They don't have the TV deals to support it. When it comes to NIL, they were fundraising. That's what they've been doing to try to find as much money as possible. I mean, the articles, if you go dig back over the last year or so, a bunch of schools are very open that that's how they've been trying to pull this off. And again, they don't have the money that the big schools do. Again, the Power Four, forget about them. And even then, it's really the Power Two and then the next two. And then now we're with everybody else. But if you play FBS football in the Conference USA, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, anything like that, you are just trying to get by. Those schools are trying to find as much money as possible to maybe pay their athletes enough to field a team that's halfway decent. But the gap between the haves and the have-nots, as Paul Feinbaum said himself from ESPN, is going to get wider. That's just what's going to happen. Because it's going to get wider in football, it's going to get wider between football teams and track teams as well. For the non-power conferences, however competitive those schools were in track already, they're going to be even more, they're going to be more cash strapped. So again, that's where I really expect most teams to get cut. Specifically in the gap between the power conferences and the ones who are FCS and down, basketball only, those schools, I'm getting to y'all in a moment. If you are in this non-power group, I'm sorry, this puts a whole lot of pressure on you and your athletic department. The idea to opt in, we've already got the data now. The American Athletic Conference is the only one that's trying to opt in with any real force to this new revenue sharing model. And they know good and well that they don't have the revenue to really share up to the $20 million mark. They're trying to work it out as a conference and figure out a dollar amount somewhere between 0 and 20 million that actually makes sense. They haven't done it yet, but they're trying, at least as far as I understand it. But track and field teams in these conferences, which historically were able to compete pretty well if you had a good coach, you could convince your administration to fully fund you up to about 12 scholarships. I mean, the idea that you can even do 12 scholarships on the men's side now is going to be really challenging. Because like I'm saying, if these schools have any prayer of being competitive in football, they had better hope that the power conferences, which are speculated to eventually break off in football, at the very least in football, from the rest of the NCAA, which there's a whole bunch of problems that come with that, and whether or not it could actually happen, even though they're trying to figure out how it will. You better hope they figure that out so that you can maybe get back to some semblance of normalcy. But as long as you're competing with those schools on what's supposed to be an FBS, playing field, you're just going to have to, dig a financial ditch because schools are spending money. They're spending money. And it's an arms race where you're just spending as much as you can to stay in the game, even if it puts you in the hole. Remember, track and field teams are a fat bill. And all these FBS conferences that are not power conferences, they've still become way too stretched across the country. Imagine, the Conference USA now has schools in Texas and Virginia. How did that actually work? Just like the Sun Belt. You've got schools in Virginia again, and schools that take you all the way down into the South and heading out west. The idea that all these schools are going to be able to travel back and forth, again, now you have a program like track and field, even if it's just a conference meet, just one meet, where you have to take your athletes from Virginia to Texas. That is a very large financial burden for a school that's trying to find as much money as possible to put a competitive football product out there. Again, the revenue share money is really about football. I have to keep going back to that. Which means the NIL money in general was always really about them. It was never about anybody else. Women's sports will get hurt in all of this. But Title IX is going to keep them afloat, at least from a scholarship perspective. Everything else, when it comes to your men's track teams or just the equity between what people are getting, especially when you look at revenue share dollars, forget about it. It's all about football, and y'all are just doing something totally different now. Track teams and the non-power schools are just going to have to deal with the fact that if they survive, they had better be happy that they get that opportunity. Because if I was an athletic director, being 100% honest, I would probably cut my track and field team. Definitely the men, and I would take a hard look at the women. Again, I would take a hard look and see if we can justify it based on Title IX and all the provisions if I'm trying to actually find money to fund a competitive football product. Just saying. Even before this settlement, a conference like the MAC basically didn't even have men's track anymore. They have a whole bunch of football teams, but like 4 or 5 men's track teams left. That's how many got slashed over the past few years as they try to survive as an FBS conference. So I more or less expect the majority of the conferences that are non-power to look something like that over the next few years, where more and more teams get cut. I mean, it's going to happen 1 or 2 at first, or 1 here and 1 over there, but eventually teams will get cut, they'll go away, and then probably not coming back. But when we move on to the last group, the Division I schools that are FCS level or basketball only, no football, don't play football at all, those schools are probably going to see, at least in the immediate, very little change. They're probably not opting into the revenue share model. They're not going to be professing that they're going to do that. So an athlete who goes there, I mean, you can just forget about it. You won't really be getting any revenue share model dollars. Or, I mean, you might be able to get some freestanding NIL money, but it's probably not going to be much, because there's just not going to be as many opportunities. So these schools are now just going to be factories. They're just going to be talent banks for the big schools to try to transfer kids out of. Above all else. I mean, that could happen in the second tier group that I just mentioned, but it's especially going to happen here. Because if you're an athlete who goes to a school that has no revenue share dollars, and then you perform well enough where another school is somewhere you might be able to transfer to, and they do have revenue share dollars, you see why you'd want to go leave. Track and field doesn't get anywhere near as much NIL money, but there is still a trickle-down effect as long as you have big football money. That means the athletic department itself has some kind of, financial infrastructure now to make sure every athlete is getting something. So it's still going to be more attractive to leave. This group 3, I'm going to just call them Division I AA. You got Division 1A up top. Division 1 AA is everybody else. If the D1 AA schools want to keep going, I mean, they can try to go business as usual, but there's really no point now in pretending that they're Division 1 like everybody else. It's basically a farce now. Like, if we're just going to be very real about it, because you're not sharing revenue, you don't have, anywhere near, the type of, resources flowing into your programs. You don't have the television deals. You don't have the exposure. I mean, again, we could act like you're D1, but what is the point? Once again, they had better hope that some clear distinction, specifically in the championship structures for the NCAA, gets put in place, where those schools don't have to compete with the ones who have the big money. In track and field, it's different because in theory, all the schools could compete against each other. But again, the athletic departments don't share much relationship anymore. The same way you could get D3 and Division II track teams and face them off with D1 track teams, which happens in regular season meets all around the country. I mean, you could do it. But the athletic departments don't share much relationship, which is why the championships are different. You compete with your own level. The biggest benefit for all the schools in Group 3 is that the roster caps are likely not going to apply to them at all. So athletes who get kicked out of the other 2 levels, they get cut for whatever the reason. The roster caps get them, schools are slashing programs, all of that. Those kids got to go somewhere. And if they want to go in D1, they're probably going to fall to Group 3. The only challenge is that Group 3 schools have very limited scholarship dollars, if at all. I mean, for track and field, that's just how it's been. Remember, the NCAA has limits on what you can give, but a limit is not the same thing as saying everybody's actually going to spend this money. It's always been like that. Don't get me wrong. Programs at this level can still get cut. We already saw Lindenwood University, which plays FCS football. Like, the moment they moved up to FCS, a year or 2 went by, and that men's track team, they were gone. Because the more competitive you try to get, the more your costs go up, and you got to find money somewhere. So that, again, I'm just clarifying that can happen. But overall, this low tier, I think the real shift for them is that being D1 is going to shift its meaning going forward, because it'll be very clear in recruiting. If you were to look at a FBS power conference school and then an FCS level, like non-football playing school, and they're both labeled as D1, you will know on those visits that these are two entirely different worlds, and it'll probably beg the question, why are we even pretending that they're the same level? Division 2 and Division 3 are really not caught in this stuff at all. I mean, freestanding NIL will exist for them, for whoever could possibly get a deal, even if it's just a little bit of money, because a lot of what we're calling NIL at this point is really just trying to give grants to athletes, like at the lowest levels, that's just being honest. The deals are for such little money, 100, 200, 500, maybe even $1,000. Like, it's not really having any impact on the athletes' lives. So those levels, they just kind of are what they are. The issue is in D1, because when people say Division 1, most of the time they're thinking about the SEC and the Big Ten. And when you travel on down to the back half of D1, all the other conferences, the ones that if we swapped them out of D1 with someone from D2, you probably wouldn't even notice. Like the Summit League Conference. If I swapped that out with the RMAC, nobody would even know the difference. Or the Northeast Conference and swapped it out with the NE10. Once again, nobody would know the difference. For the record, the first ones that I said were D1 and the other ones were Division 2. All of these conferences, they're just in that space where nobody really knows what's going on. But they're technically D1. Those are the groups that I'm saying are really just going to be talent banks. I mean, there might be athletes who go there, have a great experience, and compete. But as long as D1 doesn't restructure, where competitively for national recognition, you're not on the same level as, or not in the same pot with these power conference schools that are trying to throw money around. When you go there, you ain't going to win much. I mean, maybe in your conference, but outside, whatever winning we were doing, like a school like Tarleton State, which had a pretty good track team, that was then. This is now. It's going to be even harder for those schools to compete with anybody who's out of their level. When the CEO of college track gave his speech at the end of 2024, he was speaking to a whole bunch of coaches, and he was trying to tell them that the sport of track and field needs to change in order to maintain some degree of relevancy going forward in the NCAA, regardless of how I or anybody else might feel about it. It does feel like whatever we try to do might be a little bit too little, too late, because college sports has run away from itself. For that matter, college sports really doesn't exist anymore in the old model, or at least in its old form. We now have college sports that are going to be masquerading as professional sports. And although some people thought that it was always professional, the fact of the matter is that it was not even close. Nowhere in the country, whether you were at a top 10 program or a school that nobody even knows is Division 1, none of these places were competing as professional track and field. Don't get me wrong, as I've said before in this video, there's a lot of pressure on some programs to win at a high level, and they go get some of the best talent in the world to compete. But it's not pro sports. In reality, professional track and field athletes will tell you, and I know because I'm friends with them, that for many, competing in college was actually a step up from what they experience on the pro circuit. So when athletes want to be treated like pros, not understanding everything that goes into it, track and field has a very uncertain, financial structure. There's very little money available. They're the reason why national champions like Ja'Cory Patterson, who, competed for the University of Florida and helped them win team titles, turned professional in the sport and ended up working a job at UPS while trying to train and compete to advance his career. So in track and field, anything that sounds like professionalizing the sport at the college level is a bad idea, because even actual pros in track and field are struggling to put the money together in their situations. Not all of them, but many of them. NIL is here now, and it's likely not going anywhere. And it might help many athletes, and it might even help a few track athletes. It's just not what's best for all of the track athletes. That appears pretty clear, and we're going to have to deal with the consequences going forward, whether or not we like it. You actually made it all the way to the end of this video. I do have to admit that thank you doesn't do it justice anymore, because you are a real one. And if you want more from me beyond this video, on scarecruiting.com, you can get a ton of resources, like my free recruiting guide, online courses, and much more, including the option to meet with me one-on-one, where my specialty is helping you figure out which schools might actually be the best fit for you. And if nothing else, and you really just want to see more content like this, it is always greatly appreciated If you would please like and subscribe.